In a small, cobbled village surrounded by hills, time moved slowly, and that was just how Master Horwin liked it. Horwin was the village's famed clockmaker. His shop was filled with ticking wonders, grandfather clocks with golden hands, pocket watches no larger than a plum, and cuckoo clocks that sang at the stroke of each hour. People traveled from distant towns just to buy his creations. One spring morning, a boy named Elias knocked on his door. "I want to be your apprentice," Elias said boldly. "I want to build great clocks, just like you." Horwin studied the eager boy's hands, rough, quick-moving, impatient. He smiled gently. "Very well, but first, we learn how to wait." Elias frowned. That wasn't what he expected. For weeks, Horwin made him polish gears, oil old hinges, and clean dusty shelves. He never let Elias touch the clock's inner workings. "Why can't I start building?" Elias grumbled one day. "Because you must first learn to see Timino, just measure it," Horwin replied. But Elias didn't want to wait. One day, while Horwin was away visiting a nearby town, Elias saw his chance. "I'll build my own clock," he said. "I've watched him long enough. I can do this faster." He grabbed spare parts and began to build a large tower clock, his own masterpiece. He worked non-stop for 2 days and 2 nights, and when it was done, he unveiled it in the village square. The townspeople were amazed. The clock gleamed in the sunlight, tall and elegant. Its hands moved smoothly. Elias stood proudly as the crowd applauded. But 3 days later, something went wrong. The minute hand twitched. The gears inside jammed. On the 5th day, with a loud snap, the entire face shattered and crashed onto the stone below. The force damaged the town's ancient bell tower, silencing the chimes that had marked time for generations. The people were furious. Elias was devastated. Horwin returned to find the wreckage and a tearful apprentice. "I only wanted to prove I could do it," Elias confessed. "I thought speed would show I was ready." Horwin didn't scold him. Instead, he sat beside Elias in the ruins. "You built quickly," he said, "but not carefully. Time doesn't reward speed, it rewards attention." Then he handed Elias a broom. "We'll rebuild it, but this time, slowly." For weeks, they worked side by side. Horwin taught Elias how to file gears to the perfect shape, how to balance weight with tension, and how to test every spring and cog before assembly. Elias grew more focused, more patient. At last, a new clock stood in the square strong, silent, and beautiful. And this time, when it struck noon, the bell rang loud and clear, echoing through the village. The people cheered not just for the clock, but for Elias. Years later, when Horwin retired, the shop became Elias's. He was no longer just an apprentice, he was a true clockmaker. And above the door of his shop, he carved the words his master once said, "Patience builds what haste can destroy." In the heart of the savannah, where the grass swayed under the golden sun, lived a mighty lion named Zubi. He was feared and respected by all animals. With a roar that shook the trees and strength unmatched, Zubi believed he didn't need anyone. He ruled alone and helped no one. One scorching afternoon, Zubi lay beneath an acacia tree, enjoying the shade, when a tiny ant crawled across his paw. The lion growled, "Who dares touch me?" The ant trembled but stood its ground. "I didn't mean to disturb you, great lion. I was only passing by," Zubi scoffed. "You're too small to be of any use. Be gone before I crush you." The ant bowed politely. "One day, I may return the favor." The lion laughed so hard the birds flew from the trees. "You help me? Ridiculous." The ant quietly left, unhurt but not forgotten. Days later, Zubi was out hunting when he chased a gazelle too far from his territory. In his rush, he didn't notice a trap laid by poachers. With a loud snap, a thick net fell from the trees and wrapped around him. He roared and struggled, but the more he fought, the tighter the net became. Twisting and turning, he clawed and bit, but the ropes were too strong. "Help!" he cried. "Is anyone there? I am Zubi, king of the plains." But the animals he had once ignored or scared off were too afraider, too indifferento come near. As the sun began to set and Zubi's strength faded, a faint sound reached his ears. Tiny footsteps. The ant had heard his roar. "Great lion," the ant called. "I heard you were in trouble." Zubi sighed. "It's no use. I'm trapped." "What could you possibly do?" "Just hold still," said the ant. And without another word, she called to her colony. Hundreds of ants came marching out from the grass. Swiftly, they climbed over the net, biting and chewing the ropes, strand by strand. It took time, but slowly, the net began to fray and weaken. At last, with one final bite, the ropes broke. Zubi stood free. He looked at the tiny ant, stunned. You saved me." The ant smiled. I told you, even the smallest can help the mighty. Zuberi lowered his head. I was foolish to judge you by your size. Thank you, my friend. From that day on, Zuberi was no longer just a fierce lion, he became a wise one. He helped other animals, listened more, and treated all creatures with respect, no matter how small. The animals began to follow his example. The savannah grew kinder, safer, and stronger. And the lion and the ant? They became the most unlikely of friends, proving that strength and size mean nothing without kindness and humility. Moral: no act of kindness is ever wasted. Even the smallest creature can make a big difference. In a faraway land, there was a wise and aging king who had no children. Knowing he needed to choose a successor, he decided to do something unusual. He called all the children in the kingdom to the palace. I will give each of you a seed today, he said. Plant it, care for it, and return in 6 months. The child who grows the most beautiful plant will become the next ruler. The children rushed home, excited. Among them was a humble boy named Isan. He lived in a small village with his mother and had always loved nature. He took the seed, filled a pot with soil, and planted it with great care. Every day, he watered it, placed it in sunlight, and waited. But weeks passed, and nothing grew. Isan was confused. He tried changing the soil, adjusting the water, even praying. Still, the pot remained empty. Around him, other children were showing off their growing plants, roses, lilies, and even small trees. As the months passed, Isan became more and more disheartened. He wanted to impress the king, but no matter what he did, his seed would not sprout. Still, he refused to lie. He had done his best and decided to bring the empty pot to the palace. On the day of return, the palace courtyard was filled with dazzling plants. The king walked among the children, admiring the colorful flowers and exotic greenery. Then he stopped in front of Isan's pot. Why is there nothing in your pot? The king asked kindly. Isan lowered his eyes. Your Majesty, I tried my best. I watered it every day, kept it in the sun, and even changed the soil. But nothing ever grew. The crowd began to whisper and giggle, but the king raised his hand for silence. Then he smiled. Everyone, listen, he said. This boy shall be your next king. The courtyard fell silent. But his pot is empty, someone exclaimed. Yes, said the king. The seeds I gave you were boiled. They could not grow. I did this to test your honesty. All of you replaced the seed I gave with another to impress me, except for Isan. He placed a hand on Isan's shoulder. A leader must be honest, even when it's hard. He had the courage to tell the truth when others chose deception. Tears welled up in Isan's eyes, not from sadness, but from the joy of being seen for who he truly was. From that day forward, Isan trained with the king, learning the ways of leadership, justice, and compassion. When the old king passed, the people celebrated Isan's coronation, not because of his crown, but because of his character. Honesty is the best policy. Telling the truth may not always give you immediate rewards, but it builds trust, respect, and lasting honor. On a bright spring morning in a peaceful town nestled between green hills, a well-known professor arrived to deliver a lecture on stress management. The auditorium was filled with students, teachers, and townsfolk, all curious to hear what the wise professor would say. Carrying nothing but a glass of water, the professor walked slowly onto the stage. Without saying a word, she raised the glass and asked the crowd, "How heavy do you think this glass of water is?" People began to shout answers. 100 grams, 200 grams, half a pound, all trying to guess the correct weight. The professor smiled and said, "The actual weight doesn't matter. What matters is how long I hold it," she continued. "If I hold this glass for a minute, it's not a problem. If I hold it for an hour, my arm will start to ache. If I hold it all day, my arm will feel numb and paralyzed. The weight of the glass doesn't change, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it becomes." The crowd was silent, absorbed by her words. The professor placed the glass on the podium and looked at the audience. The same goes for stress and worries in life. If you think about them for a little while, nothing much happens. Think about them longer, and they begin to hurt. Think about them all day and you'll feel completely drained and unable to do anything. She paused, letting her words sink in. "Remember to put the glass down," she said, her voice soft but firm. After the lecture, a young woman approached the professor. "I've been carrying a burden for over a year," she said quietly. "My best friend betrayed me, and I haven't been able to forgive or forget." The professor nodded. "You're not alone. Many carry invisible weights for far too long. What matters is recognizing when it's time to let go." "But how do I let go?" the young woman asked. "Start by realizing that forgiveness isn't about the other person," the professor replied. "It's about freeing yourself. When you forgive, you don't erase the past. but you stop it from controlling your future. The woman took a deep breath and said, "Maybe it's time I put the glass down." The professor smiled. "That's the first step." From that day on, the young woman tried to focus on things she could control. Each day, she reminded herself to put the glass down, to let go of resentment, self-blame, and overthinking. Slowly, her burden felt lighter, and her world brighter. Moral of the story: everyone carries burdens, worries, regrets, stress, but the weight we feel often depends not on the burden itself, but on how long we carry it. Just like the glass of water, life's troubles can grow heavy if we refuse to let them go. To live a balanced and peaceful life, we must learn when to hold on and when to put the glass down. Once, in a grand and prosperous kingdom, there ruled a king known far and wide for his power, pride, and riches. Though he governed with strength and fairness, he often measured success only by what could be seen: wealth, land, and the praise of his people. One summer morning, the king decided to ride through the countryside, eager to see how his subjects were faring. As he journeyed past green fields and quiet villages, he came upon an old man hunched over a small sapling, carefully covering its roots with soil. The king, curious, pulled on the reins of his horse and called out, "Old man, what are you doing there?" The old man looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "I am planting a mango tree, your majesty," he said with a warm smile. The king raised an eyebrow. "You look as if you've lived many years already. Do you expect to live long enough to eat the fruits of that tree?" The old man chuckled softly. "No, my king, I do not. I plant this tree not for myself, but for the generations to come. Just as I have eaten fruit from trees planted by others before me, I now do the same for those who will follow." The king was taken aback by the old man's words. He had never thought much about those who came before or those who would come after. Everything he did was for the present moment, for glory, for power, and for himself. "You are wise," said the king, dismounting his horse. "Your words carry more truth than all the speeches I've heard in my court." The old man smiled again. "Wisdom, your majesty, is not always found in books or palaces. Sometimes it grows slowly like a tree and is passed from one generation to the next." The king stood quietly for a while, watching the old man pat the soil around the tree. In that moment, he realized something that his years of ruling had never taught him. Legacy is not built through gold or monuments, but through kindness and selfless acts that live on after we are gone. Before leaving, the king ordered his ministers to reward the old man with a bag of gold and instructed that fruit trees be planted across the kingdom, especially near schools, temples, and villages, so children, travelers, and the poor could benefit freely for years to come. As the king rode away, he glanced back one last time. The old man had returned to his planting, humming a gentle tune, his hands busy shaping the future for those he would never meet. Moral: true greatness lies not in what we take, but in what we give. The seeds we plant today may not bear fruit for us, but they will feed generations to come. In the bright, bubbly waters of Coral Bay lived a small turtle named Tilly. Tilly wasn't fast like the swordfish or clever like the dolphins, but she loved exploring and always noticed things others didn't. One sunny morning, the sea creatures were buzzing with excitement. A big race was being held across the reef, from the kelp forest to the big blue rock. "I'm going to win," said Sammy the swordfish. "Not if I beat you," laughed Bella the barracuda. Tilly watched quietly. Her flippers were small, and she knew she couldn't swim fast like them. Still, she felt a spark inside her. "I'd like to race too," she said to Mr. Clam, the race organizer. Mr. Clam blinked but nodded. "Of course, Tilly. All are welcome." The next day, sea creatures gathered to watch. Starfish stuck to rocks, sea urchins peeked out, and crabs waved their claws in excitement. "On your marks, get set, go!" The fast swimmers shot forward like arrows. Tilly paddled slowly but steadily. Soon, she saw something. The others missed a baby seahorse, tangled in seaweed. Tilly stopped. "Hang on," she said gently, freeing it with her flippers. "Thank you," the seahorse squeaked before swimming away. Tilly kept going, now even farther behind. Then she spotted Bella, stuck between two sharp coral branches. "Need help?" Tilly asked. Bella nodded, embarrassed. Tilly carefully pushed until Bella slipped free. "You stopped?" "For me?" Bella said, surprised. Tilly smiled and swam on. As she neared the final stretch, Tilly saw a jellyfish drifting across the path and Sammy the swordfish racing right toward it. "Jellyfish!" she shouted. Sammy dodged just in time. When Tilly finally reached the finish line, everyone was already there. Some laughed, others looked bored. Mr. Clam rang the coral bell. "The race is over." Tilly came in last, giggled Octavia the octopus. But Mr. Clam held up a shiny pearl. "This," he said, "is for the real winner. Tilly may not be the fastest, but she helped others along the way." The crowd fell silent. Then the clapping started. Crabs, fish, dolphins, and even Bella joined in. From that day on, Tilly was no longer just the slow turtle. She was known as the kindest creature in the bay, and everyone respected her for her big heart. Moral: kindness and helping others matter more than winning. You don't need to be the fastest to be a hero.